Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just going to allow for a couple of minutes for everybody to get into the session and get settled. But while we are waiting, please feel free to take a moment and introduce yourself in the chat. So we're going to go ahead and pass it along to Nicole to get us started. Nicole, the floor is yours.
All right. Hello, everyone. I just want to do a general introduction. Thank you for coming to our second Bad Buildings webinar installment of 2022. This year we have moved to every other month. Last year we did every month. We thought the March webinar would be the perfect opportunity to give you guys some updates from the legislature. On our end, that meant that we weren't really sure what exactly was going to be in this webinar until about last week, but we have prepared a little, not necessarily presentation, but speakers who are more involved in these specific bills that we're going to go over. But these are all bills that impact the work that we at Bad Buildings do and our partners all around the state, who you will hear from shortly. And I believe that is all on my end. Kristen, if you want to go ahead and share that screen that just has an overview of the bills that we are going to be going over. And they are also listed in order on the screen. And I believe that the first one we are covering is the DEP money. Yes, Senate Bill 722. Sorry, I couldn't see it, so I wasn't sure. And we're going to be hearing from Dennis, and I couldn't remember if Sandy was on here as well, but they're both from DEP, and this is more in their area. So they're just going to give you a little overview of what the bill is, what it means. I know that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done for this to come to fruition. So all the ideas might not be completely out there yet, but they will let you know what they do know. I'm going to toss it to you, Dennis.
All
or
right.
Sandy.
Thank you, Nicole. Hello, everybody. Nice spring day here in Charleston. Hope you're enjoying some sunshine where you are. We're here to talk about Senate Bill 722, but I'm going to initiate it with Senate Bill 368 from the previous section, which created the Abandoned and Dilapidated Structures program within the DEP. Brand new field of work for our REAP folks. Has the potential to become a very large program. The funding that was identified in the original bill in 368 was excess LCAP or landfill closure assistance program monies that we expect we'll see in 5 to 10 years after the balance of those landfills are closed and they've determined what their annual maintenance fees will be. So since that bill passed in early 2021, we've been trying to identify funding sources, be it federal grants or gifts and donations. They're all called out. And of course, we worked with the legislature and the governor's office to let them know that we had a shortcoming of funds to really get that program going. And they said, well, just hang in there. We'll get you something. We didn't expect $10 million, but we got it, and it's great. And that's Senate Bill 722 from this most recent session. There's not much to it. It's $10 million to this program we've got in REAP. We don't quite have our heads wrapped around all the restrictions on this money yet. We're having another meeting here this afternoon to figure out what those relaxed federal spending requirements are going to be. Within hopefully a week or so, we'll have full grasp of that. And we're going to start asking for some communities to work with us on some grants. So this past year, we've done a few things to try to figure out who's doing what out there, who's capable of doing more right now, and how we should set this program up. We've determined that one of the most efficient ways to get things demolished is for us to grant money to existing programs. So late last year, we sent out an online survey form to every municipality and county commission in the state. And we got some pretty good feedback on that. I think we had about 80 responses. Not a bad take rate for a random survey that went out. From those 80 responses, we've kind of refined the list. We've figured out who has a program, who doesn't, who's interested. We asked a couple questions that we think will help us further narrow our project list, such as how many structures have you knocked down in the last year? What's the average cost? Do you apply liens to properties? If anybody on here participated in that survey, you know, it was a fairly basic survey, but we're crunching the numbers. We're reaching back out for round 2. We're getting a little bit more information from communities and hope to start that grant application process real soon. We have to understand the reporting requirements on the money before we can complete the grant application form. We're looking towards the currently successful programs within a couple counties and multiple cities. We're tasked in the original Senate Bill 368 to work on redevelopment. So that's one of the measures that we'll be using is what is your redevelopment plan for these properties? We're also going to look at, you know, scenic byways, floodplain issues. There's lots of good excuses to tear down some of this junk. And we're open to other ideas. I put my contact information in the chat. If there's any community out there that didn't get the survey, didn't think they wanted to fill it out, what have you, we're still taking those surveys in. We'd love to hear from you. If you work with a community that you think needs to get us some information, please share my contact information and we'll get them the survey. That's pretty much everything except the gritty details. The wheels are turning and they're going to turn a lot quicker in the coming weeks. So if anybody has any questions, throw them out to us now. Sandy's on here. I think she had to log in under my login ID. So there's 2 Dennises on there today. One of them's better looking than the other one for sure. But if you have any questions for Sandy or I, we can take them now.
I don't have any questions, but I will be reaching out to get that survey because we did not get one here in Nitro. And we would love to fill that out as well.
Okay, I'll make a note of that, Kim. Thank you.
Do you have a way to check and see what, because I'm not sure whether I did it. This is Carrie Lewis from the city of Piedmont. And I was on a Zoom yesterday about a building that we have here, 4-story pigeon coop right in the middle of town that's falling down, or I mean, the awning and everything else is, the sidewalk is blocked off around it. But you said something about demolition. The one that I was on yesterday was just for revitalizing and demolition wasn't involved. But is this something that, you know, maybe the DEP can help us with, this bill?
The program is geared towards demolition. So when those structures are no longer salvageable, that's when we can pile in and help take care of them.
Whether the city owns it or not?
I'm sorry, say again?
Whether the city owns the property or not, because it has been passed between this one and that one. Companies that don't even exist around here for a number of years, and we've tried to contact them. We've sent them, you know, letters stating that, you know, the awning is falling off It's not, I mean, trees are growing up in the middle of it. It's just unsalvageable for one, but and we can't seem to get any help or any straight answers on how we can get this building down.
Is that the building on at the corner of Ashfield Street?
Ashfield Street, yes, and 3rd Street.
Okay, I know what building you're talking about.
Carrie, I'm looking at our dashboard right here, and Piedmont did complete a survey, so thank you.
That would be me, okay.
So in the initial phase of our demolition program, ideally what we're doing is granting money to communities that have a list of properties that they either own or have right of entry to, or have completed condemnation procedures on. Ready to go, ready to swing the ball and knock them down. So whatever processes need to take place on this particular structure, it won't be our agency that completes those processes. We'll need, at least in the first phase, for that to have been completed by the city or county government.
Who do I contact to get the go ahead for, uninhabitable property? Condemning it, I guess.
I think, are we addressing some of that later in this session, Nicole? Or is this all legislative?
This was all legislative in this.
So I guess the real answer is the county or the city would need some type of code that sets up that condemnation process. And having not been involved with that at the agency, I know there's many flavors of it. Usually it's specific to the needs of your community. In some cases, county code can be utilized in cities. In some cases, the cities want to control that on their own.
Okay, I will check with the county, but I appreciate it. I just wasn't sure where to go with it.
Roger that.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Dennis, it's Crystal Perry from Huntington. We did fill out the survey. And I'm assuming that this is federal money, so we'll all have to get concurrence through the historic preservation. I know you talked about relaxed requirements, but I assume that that requirement has not been relaxed.
Rumor has it SHPO may be relaxed, but
Oh, wow. That's a
Yeah,
game changer.
don't quote me yet.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I'll find out more today.
Okay.
Dennis, we did find out this week that a municipality can piggyback off a county if they have an ordinance, if they want to go that route. So
Great.
if the city or municipality, whatever, doesn't have a code enforcement ordinance, then they can piggyback off the county if the county has one.
Great. Thank you, Sandy.
Okay.
Well, folks, thank you very much for putting up with my spiel there. Again, my contact information's in the chat box. Please give me a call anytime. We'll do what we can to help.
Thank you very much. All right, and then if anyone has any questions that pop into their head about that, feel free to drop in the chat and we can come back to that after all of the presentations. But next we're going to hear from Mike Gioulis, who is a historic preservation consultant, as well as the president of the Abandoned Properties Coalition, and Danielle Parker, who is the executive direction of PAWB. They're going to talk about the House Bill 4568.
All right, thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Nicole. Danielle and I decided that she was going to handle it, and I'll be around to answer questions and to back her up if I have to. So I'll just turn it over to Danielle, and I may interrupt if I see something that I need to add.
Okay, that works great. So hello, everyone. As Nicole said, I am Danielle Parker, and I'm here to give the update about House Bill 4568 as it relates to the historic tax credit and the rehabilitation of certified historic structures. So this has been a really exciting bill from our perspective as the statewide nonprofit that's dedicated to historic preservation, because the legislation makes it easier to use the 25% state historic tax credit, which became permanent last year. So just to give a brief rundown, this tax credit can be used in conjunction with the federal one. That is, both are administered through an application through the State Historic Preservation Office, and then they work also with the National Park Service to review the applications. This particular tax credit is used for commercial income producing properties. We do have a residential tax credit for certified historic buildings, but this bill does not relate to that. So I'm not going to go into that today. So what does this bill really do? There's a lot of I think, language in there that is not very reader friendly unless you're kind of in the mix of it. So I'm here to explain some of that to you. One of the most exciting things that this bill did was remove the 2 caps that were originally placed on this tax credit. And it's the $30 million per year aggregate cap, as well as the $10 million per project cap. This means that there are no caps on the tax credit anymore. And let me back up, the tax credit can be used for qualifying rehabilitation expenditures, which can vary from things like having architect and engineering fees or putting in a new roof. There's a variety of expenditures that can qualify for this. The work needs to meet what's called the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation. So that was really exciting because now there isn't as much limitation on how this tax credit can be used. Originally, when the tax credit was increased from 10% to 25% back in 2017, there was also a small project set aside of $5 million, which means that there was like a certain amount of the tax credit that was reserved for smaller projects so that they didn't get squeezed out because of basically the way that you had to reserve the tax credits and how the application process went before. So all of these restrictions and some of the challenges with how you had to apply for the tax credit, like the way that you had to submit certain paperwork to reserve your allocation. So those have all been removed. I've got some notes here. So it also refers to phasing for the projects. It allows for phased projects for those that are completed after July 1st of this year. So there already was some phasing. It just kind of makes it easier that you can amend your plan and submit your plans with your part 2. So Mike might want to elaborate more, but I didn't want to get too much into the nitty gritty, I guess, because the changes are like, they make it so much easier, I think, to use the tax credit that going through the application process that you don't really need to know maybe what was changed before if you're just going into this now, just knowing that it'll be a little bit easier to work with both the SHPO and National Park Service because they're using they're following the same guidelines.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
On the phasing thing, the National Park Service and the IRS has always allowed a developer or owner to take credits as they completed each phase of a phased project, rather than having to wait till the very end when everything was all done. The state never had that procedure, even though it originally intended to mimic the Park Service procedures, they did not establish a procedure for doing that. So this bill does do that now. So owner can take a credit as they complete each phase of the project. Of course, there will be a potential recapture if at the end of the project, the final project is not approved, but 99% of the time, that's not going to be an issue.
Okay, so just looking at my notes here again. Yeah, so like Mike mentioned, it removed the carry forward of credits if they weren't allocated. It also removed the time deadline for the submittal of the part 3. And I had been checking this. It looks like, Mike, you have as well. It has not been signed as of today by the governor. It is on the pending list, but it does say in the legislation that it would take effect within 90 days. So I just think that the big takeaways from this is that our program is less restrictive now than some of our neighboring states, making us one of the most investor-friendly states in the Mid-Atlantic region. Just to give, you know, our surrounding states basically all have caps that were even smaller than ours, like $3 million per project or $5 million per project. So it's really great because now we don't have those limitations to do larger projects or projects of all sizes. And yeah, that was mainly what I had. Mike, I'm not sure if maybe I missed some of the things with, there are a couple like some things that are in the weeds that when you really get into the application process will be different for those who have done it before, but for people who have not done it, I think it'll be a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, you hit all the highlights. The rest of the stuff that I wrote up this morning is details on how it's actually going to be applied. And you don't really need to know that unless you're doing an application or unless you're a developer. And I put my contact information in the chat in case anybody does have any questions on details. I did hear this morning from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Their legislative person discussed our tax credit yesterday in a national meeting with bankers, and they were impressed. So we are doing the right thing, I think.
Yeah, and I put my contact information in as well if anyone would like to reach out. Thank you for this time.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike and Danielle. All right. Like I said before, if any questions pop in your head, feel free to put them down in the chat and we can revisit them later. And we are going to move on to one of the hardest things I've ever had to wrap my mind around, the tax sale process, and there are updates to it. So we're going to hear from John Butterworth and Kim Reed, who are like the pros in my mind on this topic. So here you go, guys.
Oh, welcome everybody. Thank you for having Kim and I here. My name is John Butterworth. I'm with the City of Charleston Planning Department. I work primarily with our land reuse agency, and I'll let Kim introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Kim Reed. I'm the city planner here in Nitro, but also the executive director for the land reuse authority that we have. So we're based in Kanawha and Putnam County. So everything in the tax sale world, I do twice in 2 different counties.
Well, the tax sale process, like Nicole said, is incredibly complex. I think one of the things that Kim and I were talking earlier about what we want to share with you all, and we have basically 2 different categories: the things that we know and the things that we are yet to know. And so I'll touch on the things that we know at this point, and Kim will talk about what we still have to figure out. So Senate Bill 552 is awaiting the governor's signature. It's still pending as far as I can tell, but it is at the governor's desk at this point. So if assuming it's signed, we will have before us a much more compact tax sale process than we have had in past years, right? So Typically, if a property is sold for back taxes, the lien is sold under our current system, right? That the time between purchase of the lien and actually a new owner getting title to the property is more than 18 months, typically, sometimes closer to 2 years. This process would squish that down to about 9 months from purchase of lien to title. And it significantly reduces the amount of interest that speculators can get as a reward for the purchase of the lien upon redemption. And that, as the APC has talked about for years, would have the effect of reducing, speculation and kind of abuse of the tax sale system, simply for the financial gain. And, speculators like that are kind of fueling the process of abandonment, and because they are treating real estate like a financial instrument when it exists physically in your neighborhood, and puts significant down pressure on adjacent property owners. So so we definitely know that the process is going to get much more compact, 9 months instead of 18 months plus. The amount of interest that folks are going to get through investing in this is going to be reduced from 12% per year to 7.5%. There are changes to late fees, right? And there are some other sorts of changes to fees and processes. The other thing that's the big announcement, and this really only affects, as far as I can tell, Wood County and Kanawha County, but the county sheriffs are no longer going to be conducting the tax sale. That will be wholly housed under the state auditor's office. And so, redemption and paperwork and the process of applying for a deed once you've purchased a lien will be handled through the state. And so that will probably significantly standardize. And like Kim said, she's one of those folks that has been trying to do this with 2 different county organizations. It is my hope for her and for anyone else that this sort of standardization will really help statewide, right? We'll all be trying to hit the same targets and meet the same rules. So other than that, it's there's still a lot we don't know. And that's because of the way the bills proceed. We haven't seen the final text yet. We just haven't been trying to muddle through all the floor amendments that have been made. So there may be things we don't even know we don't know at this point. But I think Kim's going to touch on some of the things that we know we don't know yet, and what might shake out of that.
Yeah, thank you, John. Really, the things we don't know, I feel like are a lot longer than the list we do know. Right now, what I'm most concerned about not knowing that's unclear to myself as the executive director of a land bank is right of first refusal on tax process delinquencies. Did we lose it, or what the status of that is right now? We just don't know. I don't know. And hopefully, I haven't even seen anything updated from the bill. So that's a lingering question, but I just want to piggyback on something that John said and just say it again. As a proponent of someone, I have been very verbal about the procedure being so disjointed. One county does one thing, another county does another, and education being such a big piece of it. I will say, and like I said, I'm going to piggyback on the things that are clear and the things that we appreciate, is that there's going to be one streamlined process now, all going through the state auditor's office. And that, to me, is the silver lining in all of this. No matter what else shakes out of it, we at least know that we're going to get the consistency that we deserve for the goals that we're trying to reach, which is just to address this blight and dilapidation in our communities. And partnering with the state auditor's office on that is something I know that will benefit myself being in 2 different counties. Putnam always did the redemption process through the state auditor's office, and Kanawha County handled it internally. So for myself, I anticipate this is going to be a lot easier. But to be honest with you, without the right of first refusal, I don't know how that's going to work. And I don't know how much we'll participate in the tax sale going forward. So those things remain to be unclear. I don't know what that's going to look like. John, was there anything else that you could think of on the unclear tab that you want to throw in?
Well, there seemed to be, in Taylor Bennett with the Land Stewardship Corporation, large parts of the bill do speak to an expanded role for the Land Stewardship Corporation. So Taylor, please jump in at any time if there are thoughts that you want to share. One thing that I guess we can say about the right of first refusal is the bill seems to be pretty explicit that urban renewal authorities, URAs, do have a pretty clear right of first refusal at the tax sale process. It's unclear whether LRAs are going to continue to have that, because the code that enables LRAs to have first refusal is still in the books. But whether this supersedes that, or the state auditor can and will honor that, we don't know at this point. So so if you have a URA in your community, I know our friends in Parkersburg do, and we're considering an LRA, you guys may be able to do much of the work under your existing infrastructure, and not have the need for inventing a new entity. Anything that you want to add, Taylor, about the bill, or updates that you've had, conversations in recent days?
I wasn't planning at speaking at this meeting, John, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation. I think that what I can say about this is that both this bill, Senate Bill 552 and 722, were bills that were kind of envisioned for the purpose of targeting problem properties. And I think that the auditor specifically with 552 wanted to address some of the causes of abandonment by shortening this tax sale process, as well as kind of deal with some of the backlog of properties that are kind of on their abandoned properties list at their office. And so I think, Kim, what you said about having a direct partnership with the auditor's office is going to be really important, particularly for this question of the right of first refusal. I don't have any updates on that, but Kim and John and I and others have sit on a team with the Abandoned Properties Coalition that kind of helped to support this. Actually, all 3 of these pieces of legislation. And our team is going to continue to work to get more information from the auditor's office, and we can continue to kind of be in contact, Nicole, with you and Kristen, to make sure that folks are getting good information about whether or not that right of first refusal is still available to land reuse agencies. But I'm hopeful. I mean, as John said, that piece of the code wasn't referenced in this bill at all. So the piece of code that gives land reuse agencies the right of first refusal remains intact in our state code. So we'll kind of figure that out and see about getting back to folks with some more information about that. I think that's it, except for the fact that just to say that the reason why the Land Stewardship Corporation was mentioned specifically in Senate Bill 552 is that the Land Stewardship Corporation operates a statewide land bank. So kind of the statewide parallel of what John and Kim are trying to do at a local level. So we can support folks with issues around like property ownership, which I think is really important when you're talking about repurposing a lot of those problem properties that are on the auditor's backlog. That list of, I think there's, John, what, 9,000 properties, something over 9,000 properties that are on that list of abandoned properties at the auditor's office. So, I think that having local tactics is really important. And when you pair them with statewide sort of support, I think it gets even more effective. So
Taylor,
go ahead.
Well, I was, while we're on the subject of no bid properties, that's, so, as our team has talked about in the last couple of months, every community around the state, whether you're a county or a municipality or whatever it may be, how you're going to try to address abandonment and specifically through the tax sale process is going to differ. But here in Charleston, we've, at least so far, we have been, like Taylor mentioned, trying to work through that backlog of abandoned property at the, they're referred to as no bid properties. These are the ones that are in the proverbial, property purgatory. And, but Kim has mentioned that has not been as productive for Nitro because those properties are just not as strategically useful. But one thing that I think is important to point out about the new tax sale process that we seem to know is that many organizations, not just LRAs, it can be housing nonprofits, it can be local governments, it can be city, county, whatever, have, what I would call sort of last refusal. So if at the date of auction, and those are typically held sometime in November, right, at the time of auction, if a property is a no bid, then it is immediately available for the sort of very compact and speedy no bid process. And so, that's usually 60 to 90, maybe 120 days at the very longest. And you can go from, if that lien goes across the auction block and no one bids on it at the auction, then you can say, nope, auditor, we would like it, and potentially have title just 4 months later. And so,
which is a huge win. That's a huge win. I mean, in other states around us, at the end of the tax sale process, the lien purchaser actually does hold real property, right? So they actually would get a deed to a property and then be able to move forward on that right away. What John's describing solves a huge problem for a lot of us who are kind of sitting in a space of we're not private developers, we're either nonprofit or quasi-governmental organizations trying to do property reuse, and it's just getting held up by this really, really long, arduous process. So what John just described would really change the game for a lot of us that are trying to do this.
So yeah, and so I guess the thing that is most important to realize for your community and the work that maybe you're trying to do is that this is a whole new chessboard, and we're still trying to figure out what some of the pieces are, but what we do know is the strategy is certainly going to change, and that's definitely what we're trying to wrap our heads around here in Charleston for us. But if there are any epiphanies, I know we'll be like Taylor said, and Kim and Crystal and others, we meet as that land reuse team once a month under the Abandoned Properties Coalition. So please join us if those are conversations you'd like to be part of going forward, because we have a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions that we can answer about 552?
People just drive me nuts. First off, that video is really good, by the way. You explained it well. I just posted it on the city, but Tom and Harvey Payton gave $1,000 to St. Jude's Hospital. And
okay, well, if there are no questions or anything, I guess we'll turn back over to Nicole. That was yeah, at this point there's a lot we don't know, so sorry for being anticlimactic.
I know I wish I had more to present about the tax sale process and what this legislation means to us, but if I'm just being honest with you, I don't know yet. It's not clear enough for me to say, other than just the general gratitude that I have for it being one process, a shorter process, a more streamlined process. And that's unfortunately all I have to contribute today. But I do thank you guys for having us on to discuss these topics, because we're always seeking more information.
no, it wasn't.
Absolutely. definitely do not apologize for not having any more information because sneak preview, at some point we will have a webinar with more updates once these processes are more hashed out and we know more information. So one day you guys will be able to give more information, hopefully this year. I don't know. We haven't planned that far in advance, but yes, I want to thank everyone that has not only attended, but also has given their time to speak today. Are there any other questions? Or let's see. Kristen, did you have anything else, or you just wanted to moderate the chat as well?
Yeah, everything has been answered in the chat. Definitely check out the contacts. Taylor put her contact information in there. Dennis has his information. There's just a ton of resources in that chat. So definitely make sure to get that information. I will also be making it available to attendees through our follow-up. And then the only other reminder I have is just mark your calendars for the third session of the webinar series, which will be taking place Thursday, May 19th. And then, of course, look out for more information as it becomes developed for that webinar. So if there...
Oh, Taylor,
Right.
that is a great question because we are actually not quite sure about that. I wish that I had that prepped to give you guys a sneak preview. But that being said, if you guys have any suggestions, not only for the May webinar, but for any future webinars, if there are any topics that you guys would like to see covered, no, Taylor, don't apologize for that. That's actually good that you said that, because now I can ask you guys to reach out to us if you have any topics that you guys would like to see in the future by emailing me or Kristen.
And then, of course, my email is already in the chat. I am typing Nicole's in the chat right now. So if you have any suggestions for future webinar topics that you'd love to hear about regarding your community addressing abandoned, dilapidated buildings, any of the legislative updates coming through, anything, definitely make sure to reach out to us and we will make sure to add it to the docket for this year's webinar series or next year's webinar series. We always have something to talk about. So if there are no other questions, thank you for that, seeing as how you have an older email address than me, Nicole. You don't have the same format as me.
I've been here that long.
Yeah. So go ahead and get that, get those emails in, and we will be sure to cover any topics that you have. So Nicole, anything else?
I do not think so. Just thank you everyone again.
Yes, thank you to all of our presenters, all of our attendees. I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday and an amazing weekend ahead. We will see you all in May.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.